All right, it's 6:02. We'll get going here. Good evening. My name is Nikango Sigolo. I am the Community Outreach Coordinator for Hopkins, and I'd like to welcome you to the virtual town hall meeting for Hopkins. Um, we will be talking about the Metro Green Line extension. Uh, got quite topics here that we will be covering. All right, so if we can there we go. So, first of all, I'd like to just go over some housekeeping items here. Mute your microphone if you're not speaking. Feel free to ask questions at the end of each topic. And again, this meeting is being recorded for those who are not able to join us at this time, so they could view this video at some other time, and it will be posted online. So those are the few items that I wanted to share with you as we continue with this presentation tonight. So we got a few things we're going to cover. We'll go over a brief project overview. We'll give a project update, and then we'll go over the 2021 construction activities. We will look into 2022 highlights, what the contractor is intending on doing this season. Then we'll talk about systems. We'll give you a brief systems overview, and this is in relation to some of the systems components that will be installed on this for this project as construction progresses. And then finally, we will cover communications and outreach towards the end of a presentation. So for a project overview, for those who are not familiar with the project, first of all, I just want to mention that we are transitioning from being called the Southwest LRT or Southwest Light Rail Transit to the Metro Green Line extension. So that's something we'd like to get familiar with as we progress with construction, as we start to near towards opening day, so that folks could get accustomed to calling this project the Green Line extension. What is the Green Line extension? It's essentially 14.5 miles of new LRT tracks with 16 new stations, runs between the um, downtown Minneapolis all the way to Eden Prairie, essentially extending the existing Green Line that runs between downtown St. Paul and downtown Minneapolis, with a terminus at the target field for the existing Green Line now being extended all the way to Eden Prairie, going through Minneapolis, 5 stations in Minneapolis, 3 stations in St. Louis Park, 3 stations in Hopkins, 1 station in Minnetonka, and 4 stations in Eden Prairie. So this will provide just one ride from Eden Prairie all the way to downtown St. Paul, with obviously options to transfer into the downtown to the existing Blue Line that runs all the way to the Mall of America, and also with direct service to downtown Minneapolis, U of M, and travel time for this extension is about 35 minutes between the target field and the terminus at the Southwest Transit Station. So what's the scope of the project? We're building 16 new stations, as mentioned, 44 structures, 29 new bridges, 7 existing bridges with modifications, 6 pedestrian tunnels, 2 somewhat big tunnels, southwest. I'm sorry, the Trunk Highway 62 is nearly complete there. So if you traveled in the area there, you could have probably seen some of the have experienced some of the impacts that we had along Trunk Highway 62. And then the other tunnel, that this is rather, the longest tunnel of the project is the Kennel Tunnel with over 2,000 feet of length. So 15 at-grade crossings. That includes 5 crossings with the freight. So we're sharing 5 crossings with the freight. Tons of retaining walls, roughly about 127, and then 182,000 of track feet to be installed on this project. And again, this project goes along an existing freight corridor where we're sharing the corridor with the freight. So as we continue with, all right. So we'll go through the project update. That's next. As you recall, and you might have heard some news about the project being delayed. Yes, we encountered some issues. And in fact, in early 2021, the Metropolitan Council announced that the project would be delayed. So that was made in early 21, and we had identified 2 major issues at the time, and both in Minneapolis. And I think it's worth kind of going through some of the details of these issues, because there's a lot of news out there, some representing the facts correctly. And, obviously we've also noticed that there's tons of misinformation out there. So we would like really to spend a little bit more time on this so that we could give folks an understanding of what are the issues, what's happened, how do we move forward? Do we even move forward? Is it, and if we do, how and why? You've probably heard, should the project be stopped, and all those questions. Well, we kind of go over some of that background so that we could give you additional information on what's actually going on. So 2021, when the Met Council announced that the project would be delayed, we cited 2 items: the corridor protection wall. This is a protection barrier wall between the freight corridor and the LRT. Initially, during initial design, the project included a protection barrier, but it was shorter and smaller in size. Uh, with the negotiations with the freight company, and in particular this time, the Burlington Northern Santa Fe, BNSF, as you've probably heard. So they came up with a special request, and basically it was a requirement, to have a much longer wall, over a mile, a much bigger wall, about 3 feet wide, and the height, from the foundation up about 10 feet high. So that request, or that condition came in after the project had already gone out for bids. So which means that, this had to be added as a change order to the contract, because the contract had already been awarded to the Landam Crossing joint venture. So that's one. So that's one of the delays. So it takes time to build that, and obviously cost, as I mentioned. And then the second item is the Kenilworth construction in the Minneapolis portion of the alignment steel. As we were building the tunnel, we noticed some settlements. So we initially went in knowing that there are soil issues in the area. In fact, we went in with a different approach of even driving in the support of excavation. The support of excavation is basically, we drive in sheets into the ground, either end of the space that would like to build in. And you've probably experienced this if you live in Hopkins or St. Louis Park. You've probably heard some loud banging of metal. That's that's the pile driving technique that drives the support of excavation into the ground. Um, so in this area, the tunnel area, when we started doing this work, as I mentioned, we went in with a conservative approach. We used a different method to driving those sheets. Instead of hammering those sheets in, we used a press and piler. So essentially, those sheets were pushed into the ground so that it would minimize, or avoid the vibration and the noise, and that in order to maintain the integrity of adjacent properties, as we were building near some of the properties along that stretch of the tunnel. So as we started doing that, we noticed that we're still experiencing some settlements. So out of the abundance of caution, folks stopped, and our designers and project leadership started looking at a different approach of building this tunnel in this area in proximity of uh, you know properties that are adjacent and with the poor soil conditions. So we identified the secant pile wall. Essentially, it's a retaining wall, if you would call it. It is a just kind of give you an idea. These are cylinders. If you could think of a cylinder block, cylinder wall, a block of cylinders that are interlocked and then reinforced with steel that would be beyond just the sheeting between the properties that we're protecting and the limit of our construction. So that was then an item to be added to the contract as a change order. So that also is time and money. And again, the process itself of building these tunnels is quite extensive, given the area where we're building. Number one is we're building in cells. We have roughly about 30 cells that we need to build, and it takes X amount of time to get between two cells constructions. And so that, is another factor that, is taken into account as far as time is concerned and the delays that we had experienced in this location. So then you might have heard lately that there was a report of cracks being discovered in a particular property along the construction of that tunnel. Yes, in fact, when that was reported to us, in fact, their association reported it to us, and this is the Calhoun Isles, as you've probably read about it in the news. They reported that they were experiencing cracks, and we immediately sent in a forensic team to investigate those cracks with first the idea of ensuring the safety of the residents, to ensure that these cracks do not pose a threat to the livelihood of the safety of the folks who are living in that property. So it was determined that it was safe for residents to continue to live in that property as we continued, or as our forensic investigators continued with investigations. So the investigations have not concluded yet. We are still awaiting the results of the investigation, and that will be made public and available when we get there. That's a lot of information, I know, but I just wanted to put that out there so that we know exactly what's going on and what is being cited as major key challenges and leading to the delays. Now, the contractor had also mentioned that the Eden Prairie Town Center is another item that is causing delays, especially for them, as they would have to reshuffle their schedule and cruise availability, all the kind of information in there that is also being factored into the delays. So these issues, all of them, um, add time and cost to the project. So really, now the question is, how do we what do we do? Do we stop the project? Do we move forward? And if we do, how? So what ended up transpiring is that, first of all, stopping the project at this point would be costly. So it would actually cost more to stop the project at this point rather than proceeding with the project. So the Metropolitan Council authorized our project staff to negotiate an agreement, and that happened earlier this year. So it had been about a year between when these issues were announced, as causing delays to about the time when, the project team was allowed to negotiate an agreement with the civil contractor, Londa McCrossan joint venture. So basically, what this does is, take the original civil construction schedule cost, and then you add the new construction agreement plus the change orders that I have mentioned there. That adds time, and it has been estimated that it would add about 34 months to the project. So civil construction that was scheduled, initially scheduled to conclude by November of 2022. As you may know, the project was actually scheduled to begin revenue operations, so opening day in 2023. So now civil construction alone is being pushed 34 months because of these issues. So then a revised construction schedule and cost, would have to come out of, this agreement, which in fact, it has just been signed. So just end of last week, that was signed. So basically, uh, we're now at a place where we got the revised construction schedule and cost, and again, the schedule and cost are being finalized, but at least the principle itself, that how would move forward and how would deal with these change orders, has been agreed to. So then you would add now another contract, because the civil contract does just the guideway, building, the structures, and then there's the systems component, which would build the electrical systems that will power the trains, the fare collection boxes, and security cameras, and all that, the other electronic components of this alignment. So that still needs to be revised with a systems contractor, um, Aldridge Parsons. So that's our systems contractor. And then we also have supporting contracts, and then that schedule and cost also would have to be factored into the equation to produce a revised project opening day cost. So the final cost is yet to be known. However, we are already on a pathway forward to getting the civil contractor going with construction, continuing with construction, and as agreements with the other contracts get finalized to produce that final cost. So just kind of to reiterate what I've already said. So, the revised construction schedule and cost, that's 34 months to be negotiated. Still the systems contract, uh, schedule and cost, and then the supporting contracts as well. But we were estimating that it would amount to about 450 to 500 million dollars for all of that uh, combined. So then, which will give us a final cost, and which we're estimating to now being 2.65 billion, between 2.65 and 2.75. And now the opening date has been pushed from 2023 and anticipated opening day of 2027. So the project budget, and I know we've had questions about, can we just remove some of the features, so some of the elements of from this alignment, so that we could reduce some of that cost. But in 2015, the project went through a cost cutting process, which removed you know non-essential components and some of the essential components. In fact, two stations were removed from the project, of which one had been added back by change order. That's the Eden Prairie Town Center station. The project is 60% complete, so then really meaningful reductions are not available, and also funding. Questions about where is who's gonna fund all of this. That's $500 million roughly about. Yeah, we're still working with our funding partners to identify the sources, and the project will not be asking city partners to contribute this time to that additional cost. So, as mentioned, stopping the project would actually be more expensive than continuing to build this project. Now, as we, start, taking maybe a break and start looking at what's happening around the nation here. So, is it really worth continuing with this project? And if it is, what is happening elsewhere, across the nation, so we could at least have an idea if we're really going overboard, or what's going on elsewhere. So, um, the project itself, a 14 and a half mile, it was costing about $152 million per mile, and this is before the revisions. So with the revisions, this would just jump about 30, between 30 and 40, so it'll be 180 to 190 million dollars per mile. So as you start looking at other projects across the nation, they're ranging between $200 million and $500 million per mile. And this, I'm not making up, this is actually factual, and a report is actually out there. So Center for Transportation, it's got some information on national comparisons. So as you see, 14 and a half mile for the Green Line extension with 16 new stations, we're ranging 180 to 190 million dollars. A comparable project in East Line in Seattle with 13.9 miles, 10 stations only, is at $259 million. So just wanted to throw this out there so that we could give us a general understanding of how other projects are doing as far as cost per mile is concerned. Um, Keep going. Now, there's a question, that always comes up is, is it worth doing these projects? This project is already costing a lot of money. In fact, a particular question I got, last time I had a meeting in Hopkins, was, would this project pay off by the end by collecting fare. So would the fare pay out this project? And that was a really tough question to respond to. But and again, we'd have to keep in mind that transit is a service that is being provided, and transit is subsidized as are roads and freeways. So as we start looking at what the payoff is, start looking at what's going around these transit lines. And, currently there's more than $2 billion in permitted and planning community development along the Green Line extension. In Hopkins alone, we've got the Moline, it's gotten built, completed, and the Moline is just right across from the downtown Hopkins station. Blake Road, you have Trilogy. Trilogy is building some mixed housing at Blake, right at the Blake station. There's another development going on at the former cold storage, 325 Blake Road. All of this is start talking to these developers, they'll tell you that, the proximity to this infrastructure was the driving decision maker to come and invest. So, that's understandable as, people start to use these infrastructures as they become available. So, that's one of the payoffs. Another gain is that, disadvantaged business enterprise, we, on this project alone, we have a goal, the civil contract has 16% goal for females and minority contractors. $139 million has already been spent, and we've exceeded the goal. So the project, the contractor is at 21%. And additional figures there, you could see the systems contractor, they're just getting warmed up. They haven't even really gotten into the weeds of their project, their construction. They are already at 16.2%, and it goes on. So this is a gain, as I mentioned, and it's worth mentioning. And as we continue, we start looking at how much money is being spent locally here, as far as payments to employees, and a check is being mailed out to 65 of the 87 counties in Minnesota. And again, as I mentioned, about 75% of the counties statewide, an employee or business over there is seeing a paycheck from this project. So 7,500 construction-related jobs by the time this project is over. 350 million in payroll to be reinvested in communities. So these are the types of benefits that we'd like to share with you as we start thinking about, what this project is doing for our state here. Excuse me. So we'll get into the 2021 construction recap. And I haven't heard any questions yet. So if you have any questions, you can either ask them right now, or you could wait till the end. We'll put time aside for questions at the end as well. So for our 2021 construction recap, what has happened? Quickly, we like to share this as we'd like to show processes that lead to completion of these projects and getting the final product, which is a light rail running on the tracks and helping folks move around. So initially we have. I see that we're getting some questions here. And Julia's raised her hand.
I
go ahead.
I put a question in the chat. And I'm just wondering, while I agree with you, I think it would be very expensive to stop this project. So I totally agree with that. But I also have a question if there's been any consideration to maybe revise the project. So from, maybe St. Louis Park or whatever that first station is, I believe in Minneapolis, maybe getting people into downtown or through those other stations by another form of transportation, either by providing a connecting bus service or some kind of shuttle or something, because that is the more expensive part of this project right now in that Kenilworth corridor. I mean, I know it's one of the more expensive parts of this project. So I'm just wondering if there's ever been any consideration of just kind of revising that portion. It would not only cut some of the cost, but it would maybe avoid some of the headaches that you're experiencing on that end. Thank you.
All right. Well, at the point where we're at right now, given the fact that this project has already been funded by the FTA, so it would be something very complicated to just cut those stations in Minneapolis. And again, as you start to bid on this to apply for these projects, there are various requirements, and those requirements take into account, ridership, expected ridership, and all of those put together are looked at in order to determine whether a project is viable for funding or not. So at this point, it's really almost impossible to cut the alignment short. What we've heard, though, is that the question that has come up is, since it is taking a little bit longer to build that section in Minneapolis, could the alignment at least start revenue service from where it's built at, let's say, Beltline going out west? So that, this is also something complicated because, first of all, we would not even have access to an operations and maintenance facility, because the operations and maintenance facility for this project was initially to be located in Hopkins, south of the Shady Oak Station. But then because of funding issues, we had to do another cut casting exercise, and we removed the operations and maintenance facility and added a rail support facility instead. Now, what our team is looking at is the ability to get a head start on testing, meaning that they're looking at the options of not having to wait till the end of construction, through the Minneapolis portion to start testing the alignment. So if they could at least get that, because we anticipate other areas will be completed, before Minneapolis gets completed. So if those areas are completed, then we get testing almost done in those areas, and then when Minneapolis gets wrapped up, then we only have a shorter portion to test. And that could also help with opening time, if there's any room there to kind of shift things around to get things opened up a little sooner. But and again, to your question, it would be impossible at this juncture to just cut down the project from any specific location.
Thank you.
Thanks. All right. Well, as I was mentioning, this project goes through various processes in order to be fully built. So the first item that gets done on the project, this size, is to relocate the utilities. So you'll see folks who, doing some work, digging up the ground, and relocating utilities. And you could see that happen several times. You could see X utility company coming, doing their work, backfilling. You see another X utility company coming and backfilling. If you do not know what is happening, then folks start asking questions. What's going on? These guys are coming. They're doing work. They're leaving. Are there any issues? But so that happens first, and then they prepare the site, they clear the buildings, establish work zones, they build the structures, the track beds, building all the other buildings and roadway and trails. Then the systems work comes in. Now the systems work is less intrusive, has less impacts. Start stringing the wires for the overhead catenaries, starting to installing safety and security components, cameras, intercom systems, ticket vending machines, and then the end testing. Testing is another quite extensive process because it's very crucial to get all the systems working in order to put riders on the trains. So of those, we've checked several boxes. Now we're at 60% complete with the structures. So that's the civil, essentially, between the three first stages. Those are concerning the civil construction, and then the two other stages, those deal much with the systems contract for this project. So, and again, 60% complete, 25 bridges of 29, with tons of utilities that have already been relocated, 946 conflicts we had, 1,300 public utilities also completed. The demos have been completed, and again, the operations and the existing operations and maintenance facility in Minneapolis, the Franklin OMF, had to undergo some modifications in order to be able to accommodate the Green Line extension. So that is nearly complete, and then 26 of the 27 vehicles have already been delivered. Now LRT stations, 11 of the 16 stations are underway. This will provide connection to various areas along the alignment. And then the Shady Oak Station Park and Ride, as I mentioned, additional parking, the park and ride at the Shady Oak Station was identified, throughout the development of the project, and we're working with the city, because the city has mentioned that they wanted to see a little bit more being done there, since the operations and maintenance facility is not going in at that location, instead of a rail support facility. So we're working with the city to optimize surface parking at the station area, and then we're looking at the project parking demand and also how we can maximize development on that site. So this is work in progress, and additional information on this would be made available. So what, some of the cool photos that I wanted to share here, this is a beam placement for the Minnetonka Hopkins Bridge. It's a really long bridge south of Fifth Street, and goes all the way to Smetana, along the landfill, the Hopkins landfill, going through wetland area over there. So that bridge itself has seen, most of the beams placed already. So this is another photo of that. So just follow-on work for this would be completed as the project advances. Shady Oak, seeing the station come off the ground, you can see the canopies there, and it, starting to look like a completed station. Then if you recall, we had quite some impacts in Hopkins over the course of the last year. 8th Avenue was impacted, Excelsior Boulevard was impacted, Blake Road was impacted. So this is a photo of the 8th Avenue reconstruction, and that intersection at 8th and Excelsior Boulevard has completely been reconstructed to its final configuration. And truck work, if you have driven along the alignment there, you could see that we have installed LRT tracks. This is looking to the west, so the track has been installed all the way to just west of 11th Avenue. And as you're looking to the east, this is at the downtown Hopkins station, when they were still doing some work over there. So as looking out to the east, then you could see, track all the way up to the bridge abutment, right just past the depot there. This is Excelsior Boulevard Bridge, right up at the top. What goes on the top there is the crews are doing some rebar, for an upcoming pour. And this is the Excelsior Boulevard Bridge. You can see it, and it's a massive structure across Excelsior Boulevard. This is, how it, the progress moved in 2020, 21. Continuing on, the downtown Hopkins station. This is nearly completed. As you could see, you have, start seeing signs already, wayfinding signs on that downtown Hopkins station. Advancing to the Blake Road. So this is the original trail at the Blake Road. Um, At this location, we had some impacts. Actually, we have had extensive traffic impacts as we constructed, through across Blake. So we built this in halves. So prior to the 2021 season, we were in there building the west half of that pedestrian tunnel, and then last year we were in there to build the other half on the east side. So this is how it looked like on the east side, and that's the west side as crews were advancing that work. So 2022 construction highlights. Um, well, this is a map that shows all of the activities that we're intending on doing in Hopkins. So you'll see in diamond shape yellow here, those are building activities. And, right at the Shady Oak station there, crews will continue to do to advance some station work over there. Downtown Hopkins station, still have some work on the Civic Plaza that has not concluded yet. You'll see crews out there yet to complete that work. The Minnesota River Bluffs Trail between the depot and 11th Avenue, that was shut down, and we're anticipating that spring of 2022 it would reopen. Right at the depot there, we still have some activities that would be underway. We have the Excelsior Bridge, the Excelsior LRT Bridge work that is still going to happen, and in red here, those are the traffic impacts, those are the roadway closures. So we're expecting that eastbound Excelsior Boulevard will be impacted as crews progress the bridge work over the eastbound travel lanes. There might also be some impacts to the westbound lanes as crews start to stage and pour concrete for that LRT bridge. So as we continue on to Blake Road, we're anticipating that there will be some short-term closures of Blake. Nothing compared to what we had in the past there, and we're advancing the construction of the Blake Road trail underpass. So additional information you will see in subsequent slides. So basically for 2022, for stations, we'll advance the structure at the Shady Oak, Trackway, Guideway, downtown Hopkins area. All we have really left there, apart from some follow-on station work, would be the Civic Plaza, which will be advanced as well. At the Blake Road station area, we'll still have a water main that would need to go across the roadway. We still have the trail underpass, some retaining walls, and then in that area, crews will start working on the Pierce Avenue access road that will be given access to the park and ride. For bridges, the Minnetonka Hopkins Bridge, we'll see fall-on work as crews do deck work. And then Excelsior Boulevard, we'll continue to see work over those eastbound travel lanes so that the bridge span could go and connect up all the way to the abutment on the west side there. For traffic impacts, as I mentioned, Excelsior Boulevard, this will be rather a long closure because that bridge again will be built in segments. So then, we anticipate that between spring, sometime this spring and fall, the eastbound lanes will be closed. Blake Road will be a short closure for light rail tracks going across Blake, and also for freight. We still have a freight shift to put in place across that intersection. So track work, and again, as I mentioned, we'll still need to shift freight rail between just east of Blake Road and just east of Excelsior Boulevard. You will see systems work now that the downtown Hopkins station is starting to look almost complete, and starting to get ready for additional systems work. We'll see some overcatenary poles being put in. And then we also see some additional work on that station as systems contractor gets in and advances their work. So as mentioned, the River Bluffs Trail is one milestone that we're really looking forward to. We've had tremendous interactions with folks who are interested in seeing this opened up. So we're finishing off a few agreements so that we can get this opened up, and we're very confident that we can still get it in this spring yet. So our systems contract, this is basically the electrical systems that will power the trains, communication boxes, fare collection boxes, ticket vending machines, um, you know, cameras, intercoms, all of those other components that are necessary for this train. So Aldridge Parsons, a joint venture, has been awarded that contract. Their work will be the least impactful. So you will not notice, much of the traffic impacts as they get going. Maybe as they're crossing an intersection, that will be really short time impacts. And some of the equipments showed in the photos here, those are the equipments that we'll be using. So this is foundation work. This is in Eden Prairie. Just wanted to put it in there so that you could have an idea of what's happening there. And this is a finished TPSS. It's a truck power substation. This is in Minneapolis. This is for the Green Line, the existing Green Line, right across from the Gopher Stadium. So that's how those TPSS boxes will look like with the fence around it. This is the inside of the TPSS station. Some of the systems there that help power our trains. So for our communications and outreach, we continue to encourage community members to sign up to receive our construction updates. This is the best way to get information about the project as we feature upcoming impacts and activities. So this would allow folks to know what's happening around an area if they're interested in traveling through that area, or if they live in the area. We have a 24-hour hotline. We received 23 calls from Hopkins residents. And then, my email address is listed there. We continue to do the day-to-day activities and coordination with adjacent property owners, those stakeholders who are immediately impacted by the construction. We also have a construction information work group. This work group meets about every other month. Over the course of the last year, we met 4 times. And this basically are members who are appointed by the city and representing various areas of the community. So upcoming outreach activities. The virtual town halls meeting we're having tonight. We like to do this at the kickoff of the construction season, so it give residents and stakeholders a flavor of what to expect this year. So basically, what we've gone through, is what we wanted to share with the community tonight. Public construction tours. We started doing walking tours last year. However, with COVID, it really impeded our ability to be out there and and be with the public on site. But as things starts to open up, we will be holding tours throughout the construction season. We'll even enlist our youth, and so we'll be working with schools so that we could get the young folks interested in the tours, and again for people who would not be able to be physically present, at a site or a construction site, would offer the virtual tours so that they could see it, from a distant location. Pop-up events, we'll continue to do pop-up events. These are events that we've done pre-COVID. Basically, we would have a tent, along the trail, and we'll start talking to folks who are riding and walking by. And, it has shown to be very, very useful as we're reaching out to a larger community that way. And again, construction updates will be published, and during the busy times, we publish them. We publish these updates every week, every Friday they go out. But during the slow times, those get published bi-weekly. And so as I mentioned, we have changed the name of the project and how it would like to be called. Now it's a Green Line Extension. Our website URL has also been changed to show the greenlineext.org. Our email, obviously, the general email box is still the same, just so that we can catch all the emails and folks who are not aware of this name change. But then, when we're still on Twitter, Instagram, and I am available. I am the community outreach coordinator. Reach out to me if you have any questions, and if you'd like us to come to your events, please let us know, and we'll be very, very glad to be out there. Thank you very much. I know this is a lot of information shared in a very short time, but I'd like to open it up and see if folks have any questions. I'll go to the chat and see if there are any questions in the chat that we could address. I see there was one question and from Julian. I think we'd responded to that. Anyone? Any questions?
I've got one.
Yeah, go ahead.
So I guess to clarify some stuff about the barrier you mentioned at the beginning.
Yep.
Could you go over that again? Like, was this not an issue when construction started, or like what exactly happened here?
Okay, you mean in the Minneapolis portion of the alignment? Am I correct?
Yes.
All right. So let me put that slide up. All right. So again, as I mentioned previously, two major issues were identified. The corridor protection wall. So this corridor protection wall we had we had a barrier wall, included in the project with the initial design. So when the project went out for bids, we had a smaller wall, shorter wall included in the bid documents. Contractor bid on the project, was awarded the contract with a small wall, short wall. Now, as we continued negotiations with BNSF, and again, the FTA, before providing federal funding, they would want to get all the agreements in place, right? So the agreement with the BNSF was an important item. And so we came to an agreement with BNSF, but with a condition. And that condition was to build a much longer barrier wall and a much wider barrier wall. So that added to the cost and time. So that's one of the delays. And then the other delay is the construction of the Kenilworth corridor. As crews were building the tunnel, initially, as we went into that construction, we knew that we had soil issues there. And when I mean issues, is we had soil that needed a little bit more attention as far as building methods, as where would instead of using a technique that would cause vibrations, what would used a press and piler. And we got videos on YouTube of how that press and piler works. It's really very quiet, and it essentially just pushes the sheets in. So even with the conservative construction methods, we still experienced settlements in the area. So then, out of the abundance of caution, the project stopped that construction in that area and started looking at ways of building this without, jeopardizing the integrity of adjacent properties. So then a new construction method was identified, a secant pie wall, which had not been included in the original bid document. So this is another change order. So those two are the change orders that had to be added to the contract in order for construction in this area to proceed. And so that's where we get the time and money. And again, as I mentioned, constructing these tunnels are very delicate. Why? Because we have 30 cells to be built, and each cell takes about 4 weeks or so before you could transition to the next cell. So you do the math there. 4 weeks times we got 30 cells. It starts to add up in time. So then all of that time and the stoppage that had occurred, it adds up to the delays. And that's what we're mentioning, and that's what we're saying here tonight. And again, as we're approaching the contractor to start negotiating these changes, the contractor cited Eden Prairie Town Center Station as one of the items that is adding up to the delays, because it's an item that was also added by change order. Basically, the city of Eden Prairie added the Eden Prairie Town Center Station after obtaining some additional funding, and the station had been cut during the 2015 scope reductions. So those three all together, are the driving factors that are delaying the project, or at least for the Eden Prairie Town Center Station, as the contractor mentioned, also an item to be added to the two in Minneapolis.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Any Any additional questions? Right. Well, before we part here, I'd like just to recognize that Council Member Mali Cummings is on the call with us tonight, and I just wanted to see if Council Member, if you had any closing remarks or anything you wanted to share with community members tonight.
Thank you, Nikongo. First of all, I would like to thank everyone who has tuned in for this opportunity to get the latest information from you. I really appreciate your openness and honesty. I think, there are challenges. We are very aware that there are challenges, and we are facing them head on and doing the best that we can. And one of the most important things we can do at this point is to continue to convey what we're doing, how we are addressing these challenges with the public. And the more we can have the public knowledgeable about what we're doing and why we're doing it, I think is vastly, vastly important. So Nikongo, I thank you for your important role in all of this. I also know from experience over the years here that you have been very open to individuals when they have a concern, when they have a question. They reach out directly to you, and I see that the last slide had your contact information, and I know how quickly you respond to individual questions, and so I would urge everyone who is on this call to feel free. I'm volunteering Nikongo to answer the questions, but don't hesitate to get in touch with him or get in touch with me, but I will be getting the information from Nikongo, who is the expert on this. We really appreciate, we understand that Hopkins has had a number of challenges as far as road closures that have been lengthy. We appreciate everyone's patience. This is a once in a generation, multi-generation project. It is the largest project